Hello everybody. This is the the first stream we have this year about openLCA. I'm Andreas Siroth. I'm happy to have the chance and to be able to present this new database that we have worked on in GreenDelta for openLCA. The structure is so that I will have only 4 points. First I will explain a bit background, then implementation details, and then using the database live, and then summary and discussion. You hear maybe that my voice is a bit not perfect, so I hope you will still be able to hear me. The database is called EN15804 add-on, the EN15804 add-on for Ecoinvent that we developed, so for the Ecoinvent database. And it is maybe, it's first stream since some time. It's always a bit an effort to set this up. We still try to, or wanted to test and continue this, but also see how that works, and if maybe a normal webinar also is better. But I think it maybe, hopefully, gives more interaction with users. Can also be eventually be longer in future, so not only whatever, half an hour or 30 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour or so. So let's see how this develops. And with this, no further talking, I wanted to directly go to the first point, namely 15804, EPDs, openLCA, and Ecoinvent. This is a bit the basics for all this that we have done. EN15804 is a European norm, and I have taken here to basically define this, or to define or specify the scope and idea behind this, taking a quote from the EBU website. EBU is one of the largest in Germany program operators for EPDs, and they say EN15804, often shortened as EN15804, Building Sustainability Environmental Product Declarations, Basic Rules for the Product Category of Building Products, ensures that all EPDs for building products, building services, and building processes are derived, verified, and represented in a uniform manner. It stipulates the fundamental product category rules, and that, of course, is quite a big aim for a norm, but also interesting and of course also worthwhile to really achieve this, because with this, when this is achieved, or with this achievement, the idea is that EPDs in the building industry will form the basis for description, evaluation of buildings in the end, and that's of course thereby a specification or a more detailed rule setting for the ISO 14025, which is, as you know, maybe the generic, so to say, or mother ISO standard for EPDs. So that's really big goal for this European norm. And I don't want to go too much into details here, because it's a bit, it can become very, very technical, I think. But if you are working a bit in this field, then you know that there are in 15804 version from 2012, which is abbreviated often as Annex A1, and the more recent Annex A2 from 2019, and there was a German translation made available in 2020. And basically this norm contains rules about the modeling, the indicators, and lifecycle structure and boundaries that need to be observed in this when making EPDs in the construction sector. And for the indicators here, these are a mixture, we will come to this later, these are a mixture of LCA impact categories and inventory related indicators. So it's a life cycle model that is described, but then it is not what you know from a life cycle assessment, life cycle impact assessment, impact categories, but also other impact categories that are not categories, but indicators that are inventory related. We will come to this as said. This is how, maybe it's not too surprising, but just to bring this to your attention back again. This is how then EPDs, so these environmental product declarations that are basically done following this EN15804 look like. Here's only a result page of one EPD. Every program operator is free to define an own template for this to some extent. So therefore, this is here from EBO, from a German steelwork. And it's very small, so you don't see really, but you see my mouse hopefully. Here are these LCA indicators, and here are then input inventory indicators, and here are output inventory indicators. And that is an EPD from the older A1 version of EN. And here, just for completion and even smaller, I'm sorry, is an EPD for the A2 annex, so A2 newer version. And you see that there are more here are more indicators even. We don't see that here are these A1, 2, 3 and so forth. These are template or prescribed lifecycle stages, and this lifecycle stage need to be more complete in the A2 norm than in the A1 norm. Therefore, you have more crosses here in this than in the other A1 EPD. Now, a bit into these indicators. When it's always a bit maybe not so easy to get an overview there, and therefore I try to make this make a picture to illustrate this a bit. So the basic idea is here in the middle. This blue dotted line that you maybe see is that according to EN15804, you make a life cycle model, but only consider one life cycle. Yeah, so this is a common, almost philosophical question in every life cycle assessment system, that you often have cases where you either take recycling material from a previous life cycle, so waste paper, waste glass, steel scrap, whatever, or your system produces steel scrap, waste paper, whatever. And the question is how much of the effort that if you take, for example, steel scrap, how much of the effort should be considered in your life cycle when you benefit from the production that has happened for steel in the previous life cycle, and with of course considering impacts and so on, and vice versa. So if you produce steel scrap and the next life cycle benefits from that, how much can you get credits for this? And the setting in the EN is that you need to or must focus on one life cycle, meaning you should neither award credits for releasing recyclates to the next life cycle, nor need to pay burdens if you take up recyclates from a previous life cycle. But you need to inform about these facts in special indicators, and these are resources, input flows from a previous life cycle here on the left, these dark green, and on the other side these orange inventory output flows to a next life cycle. Yeah, we come to this a bit more in detail. This is material output flows, but also energy that is provided to a next life cycle. And then we have the LCA indicators are resources and emissions, so this is more common, so like abiotic resource depletion and CO2 equivalents for climate change, for example. And finally we have waste, so things that happen in between the systems. So if one process has waste, then this needs to be also taken into account, but not every time. So typically you have cascades of waste processing, only at the final stage of the waste. Also I will explain this. Yeah, so this is the complete picture. And basically when using, or basically of course when making an EPD or a life cycle model that is meant to perform or to create in the end an EPD, then it's quite common that you have some processes which are specific for the company and the product, and of course you calculate and model these yourself. But then for the electricity grid mix, for transport, for whatever, you take generic databases, and this database must of course fit to the EN15804 standard, and therefore the database needs to also support these sets of other indicators, I say, so not only LCA but the others. And it is, of course, it's a good or natural choice maybe to start from an LCA database, but this database needs to then be modified to some extent to really then be able to provide these indicators, so that in the end you have a consistent system. Of course, that's the goal, that your foreground system has these indicators as needed, but also the background system, meaning the database that you use for generic database that you use for completing your supply chains, also supports these indicators. Yes, chat is not extremely active, I see, but I hope you hear me. Here a bit more, or here are the A2 indicators. Here in this green, the core environmental indicators are just acidification, climate change in now different versions, so biogenic and so forth. And then this, what I made here brown, is abiotic depletion for fuel and mineral or material elements, and then freshwater eutrophication and so forth. So this is really straightforward LCA, I think. And then there are resources, so non-renewable energy input, renewable energy input, freshwater, secondary materials, and so on, and waste in 3 distinctions, and also output flows, components for reuse, exported energy, and so on. Yeah, and for the A2, they have also optional further environmental impact indicators that are basically could be provided by a normal LCA database, but often like material particulate matter emissions, for example, or ionizing radiation, that is not too broadly supported by normal LCA data sets, and therefore this is sometimes not, or because it's optional, but it's sometimes not then reported in the EPD. But so these have been the EN specification and then requirements for an LCA database to be used in this context. OpenLCA, I don't want to then, there's often like a marketing section in these presentations, and there are of course different LCA softwares, and probably everybody, so Simapro, Gabi, and even Umberto claim that they are market leaders. I think we can also claim that we are market leaders with OpenLCA, but it's not, it's maybe not so interesting for users. I can say that it's a powerful free open source LCA and sustainability assessment software that we develop at GreenDelta, really under active development. So you see this also in the download page, with really thousands or several 10,000 users worldwide, and it has some special features, and here in this context really several special features, but in this context one was especially useful sorry and that is that products do not need processes, unlike in other LCA software. So you can just have a product, and it does not need to be produced by a process, but you can just have a product that is input in some process, and that's quite useful. Here's a screenshot of the latest stable version, and you get the software from openLCA.org. Finally, not the least, Ecoinvent. This is the, you could say, database that we hook on or use as basis. It's also here, I don't want to make marketing, and there are several LCA databases, of course, but Ecoinvent is really very broadly used, originally from Switzerland, but the idea is to provide coverage of worldwide coverage of processes and products, ideally every product, but that's of course more a wish, and it's not fully achieved, but it's really quite complete, reviewed, and one important benefit is, I think, that the database consists mainly of unit processes, meaning of small modeling units that you can really transparently see and also change if needed. And also, third point, all the database is provided in several versions, as you know. One the version is called system model. That is then different in allocation, in how, for example, this switch between different life cycles that I mentioned is addressed. And one of these system models is the so-called cutoff system model, which fits to the basic EN15804 requirement that you focus on one life cycle. And I've here taken from Ecoinvent two pictures. One comes on the next slide that shows that. So you have here an activity that has a product and emissions and takes maybe up resources and inputs, and you have it also takes what Ecoinvent calls recyclable, so like waste paper, for example. And then this is dotted, this line, because it's burden-free. It comes burden-free, so you do not need to consider the effort or burden for producing the paper in the first life cycle, but you can just take it in your activity, and it's as if it's, I always say, as if it falls from the sky, so you can just use it. And the same, but a bit more complicated, is if you have a byproduct, so on the output side, and here it's Ecoinvent combines that, so this activity here basically has waste, and Ecoinvent needs to model this with negative, so therefore it's input of negative waste, but basically it has output of waste, and that's treated, but that's not so important for us. But important is the waste treatment has a byproduct that goes to the to a next life cycle, and this is also burden free. Yeah, so therefore this is that you only focus on one life cycle point, and that fits to the EN requirement. Of course, what does not fit in this cutoff model is the support for these other indicators, and that was the work that we have done. Yes, and now maybe let's see a bit of, I only wanted to show two implementation details because it's quite maybe technical. A full documentation of the, or maybe almost full documentation of the details you find in Nexus in this link. Also, when you go there to the database and you see documentation, then you see this report. It's not terribly long, but you really get explained how these different aspects were modeled, I think. And I wanted to focus only on two. First is waste. For waste, it is necessary that you address waste only in its so-called final waste state to prevent double counting. And that means you have typically in waste treatment several processes that use the same waste and basically are, for example, sorting, cleaning, separating and transport and so. And this of course, if you took into account all these wastes, then you have really several times the same waste considered, but that's not possible or permitted, but you need to look at the final waste state, so the final process that treats the waste. And then there are three sub-indicators: non-hazardous waste, hazardous waste, and radioactive waste. These final waste state is typically landfill and incineration, because in landfill the waste stays, and in incineration, of course, the waste is, it doesn't disappear, but it's basically destroyed, you could say. And then hazardous was used either, it was clear from the, or is clear from the waste description that this is hazardous. And then also Ecoinvent has, it's screenshot here from openLCA, has a folder treatment and disposal of hazardous waste. So everything that was there was also assumed to be hazardous waste by us. And then you have often the point that you have radioactive, or that you have radioactive waste that is of course also hazardous, but then we declared it not as hazardous but as radioactive waste. So if waste is radioactive and hazardous, it was radioactive. Yeah, so that's maybe quite clear. And technically here we just added a new elementary flow in these cases, and that elementary flow is then taken up by an impact assessment method and category. The second is more complicated but also interesting, and for us it was to start to do this on our own. Materials for recycling are part of the output flows. One example is aluminium scrap. That is in Ecoinvent, so this is a screenshot from an, hopefully you see that is input in processes in Ecoinvent cutoff as minus, Yeah, so it's a bit interesting. So cutoff is this system model that does not consider previous life cycles. But still you see here this aluminum scrap post-consumer is delivered by a process aluminum scrap post-consumer recycled content cutoff and negative. Meaning negative means it's basically an output. Yeah, so it's in the construction you have some steel scrap or aluminum scrap, sorry, quite a lot, but here so it's 10 million kilo, but it's one entire luxury hotel in Brazil, so maybe that's fine. And this is output, and in Ecoinvent this is described as input with negative and with a provider. And then if you see here this a bit more large to not to show that, and then this provider is looking like this. So it's basically a dummy process that is only this output flow and nothing else. Yeah, meaning that exactly shows that this is not contributing to any input and is not is cut off and not leading to credits or burdens from a previous or past life cycle. To reflect then, and this aluminum scrap for us is material for recycling that is output, because it's in the end output of this, for example, hotel. And what did we do to consider this? We introduced a new flow for these cases for recycling. So it's aluminum scrap post-consumer for recycling and so, which is not produced by any process, so it remains open in the calculation result, because it's a bit, so basically going back, this works of course, but it's more a requirement from other softwares like CIMAPro that can't work with a product that does not have a process that is producing it. And the a bit negative aspect is that in a life cycle calculation result, you don't see that you have an unfinished supply chain, but it's just assuming to be fully, fully closed. Yeah, because this here this process produces this product and then it doesn't appear in the inventory calculation result. We changed this, so we have a new flow for recycling that is not produced by the process. Therefore, you see that's then in the inventory calculation result. And then also you can add this flow to an LCA method, so to an impact assessment method, and get results for it. Yeah, so you see this here. So this is now what we did. Cutoff is not correct, sorry, but it's now called 15804, but this was the intermediate state. So this is for recycling, same luxury hotel process, same amount. Also, we kept it negative. We don't have a provider here. And then no process also is producing it at all. And then we have here in the impact assessment method just aluminum scrap new for recycling or post-consumer for recycling -1, and that means minus minus is plus. So therefore, this whole amount that is contributing to a system is then shown in the calculation result. Yes, so that was quite for us quite interesting. I'm not sure if you have questions so far. Also, I don't see how many viewers we have at all, but I trust that there are some. So then I just go to openLCA that you see here, and this is the database. I didn't prepare this, or I thought I can do this on the fly. So this is the same process that I've shown previously. You see that this is again the post-consumer scrap without provider. And just to demonstrate this, I can make a product system out of it with default settings. So auto link also, so that I get the full supply chain. It takes a bit of time, of course, but it's quite fast. Then I can maybe also here you see then that this is typical Ecoinvent system, so 13,000 processes connected and so on. and then I can calculate. And then you see here that we have in this database 3 different impact assessment methods. One is the A1, that is reflecting that the EN15804 A1 indicators. The other is A2, which we have in third version, so don't be confused with this. And then we have the additional ones that are not always interesting, to keep them separate. Then I calculate. Also this takes a bit of time, but it's not taking too long. And then I will be able to show you the also the effect of this removal of the cutoff processes on the inventory result, because then this will be surviving, so to say, in the inventory. And then you see it's for one transparently showing that they are cut off supply chains, and second, they can be used in inventory impact assessment calculation. So that's exactly what I wanted to show. You see here that we have here, of course, not only for the hotel, but some here. These are all products, aluminum scrap for recycling, and so on. With the leaf, these are elementary flows, and oxygen furnace, for example, furnace slag, bronze scrap, whatever. Yeah. So this is all these same principles. And in impact analysis, we see here the LCA indicators, these here, then output flows, and then resources, so these input flows, and of course the waste. So that's this is the logic. And then in openLCA, of course, you see then here quite nicely who is contributing, which flows are contributing. So it's very detailed, and more detailed than the other software, and helps a lot to drill down really the results. I'm not sure if there are. Yes, feel free to ask questions. I'm not sure if there are more. Needs to show you, but I basically, of course, I think with these modifications that we perform, the use of the database very the same as in other Ecoinvent database, and you get the indicators that are needed and demanded by EN15804. And of course, typically you will not just take one process and then just use the database, but combine this with your own foreground model. But that, of course, is a bit depends then on your specific case. If there are no questions, Julia is also encouraging already, but if there are no questions, I can continue with the slides, and I will have a question and answer at the end, so therefore this is not last possibility for you. So summary and discussion. I think so we made this database to reflect EN15804 A1 and A2 for EPDs in the construction sector needs. And it's really the first time this is available in software for Ecoinvent 3.8. It builds, if you read the documentation, you see that it builds on the database that Ogios or Chris Foster made, but we made this more, he made this manually from a user perspective more, but we made it from, because they're within the database, and that is more consistent, I can tell, and really covers all processes needed. So that's quite, I think it's quite an achievement. You get this from openLCA Nexus, so our normal page to distribute databases via this link, but you also easily find it. Just go on openLCA-nexus.org and on Nexus openLCA.org, and then you find the database. And you need, of course, it's not, we did not make it expensive, but you need to have an Ecoinvent database, of course, in addition, or license, of course, in addition to use it, because basically it sits on top of Ecoinvent, as we had explained, or I had explained. And then it's a bit, maybe this opens a bit a window of an interesting discussion, I think, because of course often, at least in Germany, Gabi databases are used for EPDs, and they have system processes, and for some reason, they often do not provide the inventory indicators. And I take here to not lead to any license issues or so. I take here public data set that Sphera has prepared to be made for EPDs as background data for the Ökobaudat, which is the German public database to be made for the EPDs and construction sector. So it's steel window fitting. It's just one really arbitrary example, and you see that this consists of aluminium, zinc cast, steel sheet, and so on. Somehow this is the official result. So here for all these primary energy resources, secondary material use, components for reuse, exported electric energy, all zero for all the life cycle stages. And of course nobody apart from Sphera can look into this data set, but it's a bit interesting. So I think this, hopefully also this, when we publish this database and you can really then see, okay, here I have contributions from my system for that indicator from that process in the system. It's quite interesting to wonder then if in Gabi these processes don't exist, or if this maybe the indicators have been treated differently or have not been added or so. So therefore this is quite an interesting point to discuss, I think. And so overall I hope we bring more light and transparency into EPD creation and use. The database itself is verifiable, so that's quite an interesting point. So it's not like closed truth that you just need to accept, but you can really look into it. We are going to have this database also verified so that you can really say this is correct and so. And therefore, I hope that this increases the quality of the EPDs that are performed. Let's see how far this, I mean, that's of course always a common wish. But going back to the beginning, this very bold and ideal statement from EBU in 15804 ensures that all EPDs for building products are derived, verified, and presented in a uniform manner. That, of course, requires that you have really a transparent view into how the EPDs were calculated, I think, and therefore, also for that reason, I hope that our database contributes to this. Yes, thank you very much. Not that I forget, so now you can still ask questions if you like. Maybe one in blue, one point we are growing and hiring. So if you are either German speaking or English speaking and good in sustainability research, software or data development, then contact us with this under this link. That would be nice. Thanks a lot. And then I hope somebody asked one question, but let's see. Thanks a lot. So I wait for some time to let you compile, but so to say, but thank you so much so far, I mean. That's interesting because last times we at least had some questions, but if no questions, then we can also stop. Yes, thank you, Julia. It shouldn't be operated mainly by our colleagues, the chat, but fine. Anybody? No. Right? Julia, so I stop, maybe? Okay, fine. I'm happy that someone is bold enough. Yes, I'm happy that someone is bold enough. So small or not, question is, in 15804, it's a database does a small modification to Ecoinvent. It also has its own LCA indicators. So basically, with this modification that we have provided, or we are providing a new version of Ecoinvent that is building on top of the Ecoinvent cutoff system model, and that fully reflects the requirements of reflects the requirements of the EN15804, and yeah, can be used like Ecoinvent in LCA model. Its own LCA indicators, so we take, of course, the LCA indicators that are required by EN15804, so we don't invent our own or so, but this is really what the standard requests. And if you have this database, then you can be compliant with the standard, so that's the idea. Oh, that's nice, someone is clapping. Good then. Further questions? Otherwise, thanks a lot. I hope that was useful. And yeah, let's see. If you have any questions, let us know. Also, if you have anybody who thinks he would like to be involved with us, let us know. Thanks a lot. Good. Bye-bye.